Good evening to the select band that are here for the Scrutiny Management Board of the 29th of April. I'll start with apologies for absence. I've got Councillor North and Councillor Lawal. Any others? No. So next we've got the meeting on the 18th of January and then the 29th of February. I'll start with the 18th of January. So any comments? All happy with those? Yes? Okay, can I take them as a true and correct record? Nods will do. Okay. And then there's the meeting of the 29th of February. Are we happy with those? Any? Yeah? Yeah? All happy? Take those as a true and correct record? Splendid. So next we're on to the draft scrutiny annual report. And do you want to lead? Oh, there was a speaker expected, but he hasn't arrived, so we can't take him. Just do declarations of interest. Oh, yeah. So have we got any other declarations of interest?
I was just going to say, do they know he's here? Sorry.
I understand the concierge has been told, yeah. So any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. So the draft scrutiny annual report, sorry, Mr. Khan, you want to lead us in?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the first draft annual scrutiny report under the enhanced scrutiny arrangements. As part of developing this draft, I requested all the scrutiny officers to provide me with the annual scrutiny activity update, which I then edited and got them to send to all the chairs for their comments and feedback, which they did and has been incorporated in the draft before you. In a nutshell, this report encapsulates a year of your diligent scrutiny activities, really, reflecting on the commitment of the Council to enhance governance, improving resident outcomes and enriching the value you add to the executive decision-making and holding the executive to account. In terms of key highlights, very briefly, so the comprehensive work programme you will see covered a diverse range of topics, including finance, performance, health, social care and place shaping. In terms of in-depth reviews on asset management, community levelling up and developer contribution have significantly supported the objectives of the Council in terms of corporate priorities in relation to levelling up and regeneration. You also had training and development provided by the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, which was needed under the new arrangements. In terms of statistics, so you held a total number of 43 meetings during the year, which is nearly 100% increase compared to the last such report published in 2022. So quite a significant jump there in terms of committees held and the scrutiny undertaken. In terms of looking ahead, our focus will be, through your input and guidance, in relation to few key areas. Number one being the development of annual forward work programme, where we will have to work strategically and prioritise the key areas, and part of that I think Ben will talk to as part of the item after this. One more area which I believe my advice would be to focus on is developing a way of monitoring our scrutiny recommendations. So when we make recommendations, what happens to them, and we need to develop a system which I'd be happy to work in terms of developing for you. And two more areas which I'd like to draw your attention is how develop ways in terms of how we can have more effective pre-meetings, even on Teams, but really think about our key lines of inquiries and recommendations. And finally, in terms of focus areas, so this week, in fact, on Monday, the government has published new statutory guidance for a scrutiny. So that means that the planned executive scrutiny protocol, which I was developing and was due to come back earlier, needed to now be slightly delayed, unfortunately, because we need to reflect what the new statutory guidance says and take into account. So I will ensure that I'll do that after the elections are held and we are a bit more free time to look into it, and that will come before you as soon as we are able to do that. So in the end, really, just to say thank you for your commitment and support for the scrutiny activities, and over to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. So if we go through it, the report and the various appendices bit by bit, I'll start with the report. I've got a couple of things that occur to me, and they might go in the attachments as well. We don't mention anywhere EAPs, which I know are not scrutiny, but I think we ought to make the point that they complement scrutiny and they have a different role, and I think we ought to acknowledge that, if only to make the point to people reading the report that, you know, they are separate and they have a distinct role. And the other thing that I thought we've had some issues really with timing of the meetings as opposed to when they go to the exec. So, you know, often we found we can't scrutinise something because there isn't time. And I think that's something we need to acknowledge and say we're looking at. Apart from that, so, Councillor, either of you got any comments on the covering report, first of all? Go on.
I don't think it sort of goes down into how we scope or conduct a review. So in terms of, you know, is it sort of like going to be select committee style? When we started this last year and the new arrangements for it, I know that Adele at that time said that we need to be more outward looking rather than inward looking. So it's about who we invite that will be able to give us some of the information that we need to make up the evidence that we need, as well as our own data sources and things. So it's around, you know, what is best for that particular review, and how we need to bring in people that will have evidence that we can gather.
I think the health one particularly has got outside, but the other two, you're quite right, are more inward looking. Did you want to make a comment? Yeah. Or one of you?
Yeah. So thank you, Councillor Buckingham. I think through you, Chair, you make a very good point, because the government recommendations in Annex 2 and 3 talk about that. And as you mentioned, Chief Executive, then Executive Director talked about this. So that is an area which it is in my in-tray in terms of how we can do that and develop. And we will try and capture some of that in developing our forward work programme for the next year. And with Ben's cooperation and other colleagues, we are hoping to put in place a in-person workshop to do that. So we'll have that in mind. The only caveat I would put would be that we need to be mindful of the capacity and the pace ourselves. So it'll be more of a marathon rather than a sprint. So you might have to be quite picky, cherry pick which one you think lend itself to external, and we can do that. But I take your point. Thank you.
Anything on covering report?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if I could just pick up on a couple of things that Kunwar said when introducing it. You were talking, Kunwar, about measuring having a better overview of outcomes, if I understood you rightly. Obviously, all of the report does list all of the outcomes in it, but I think, are you talking about a different methodology for measuring outcomes of scrutiny?
Through you, Chair. I think one of the fundamental things for any authority to measure its effectiveness in terms of a scrutiny is how to have some sort of a method to say what is happening to the recommendations they're made. So what I'm thinking as a starting point, Councillor, is to put in place a recommendation tracker in place, which will then list which meeting this particular recommendation was made, what happened to it, and then keep a tab on it. So when it comes to annual or 6-monthly review of our activity, we have a clear idea of our recommendation rather than referring back to minutes all the time and give you a one place where you can look. That's the starting point. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it's about measuring the benefit of scrutiny, and if you're providing recommendations to the executive, or for instance through health scrutiny providing recommendations to local hospitals, ambulance service, integrated care board, etc. It's about making them measurable, and we can say we've made recommendations. People can say yes, we'll take that on board and we'll take them away. But what effect has that had, as Kunwar was saying, 6, 12, 18 months down the line?
Yeah, I mean, I see that. I think things would be clearer if you could take that longer term vision. I think that there's a lot in this draft report which effectively, here and there it will say recommended to executive, and then there's another bit that says this is what executive actually did following that. But it is rather hard to navigate. So I think some other methodology. I don't know. Do you have a local authority in mind who does it well? That we could imitate?
So the best practice from CFGS, and if I can plug in my previous authorities here, Surrey, which went through a change phase and do it really well. Their focus is on two things really in developing the effectiveness for scrutiny, was to have a really effective and planned pre-meeting on Teams to begin with. So we develop key lines of inquiry in advance. So we distribute who's going to lead on certain areas, and based on that, develop what they call a smart recommendation, a specific, measurable, actionable, time-bound, and realistic. So that's the journey I want us to pursue, starting with the scrutiny workshop. And then I think what you're alluding to is probably comes in the third stage, would be then once we have all the basic fundamentals in place, then we talk about when we're doing a review of something, let's say in-depth review you have come up with, or external, then perhaps we can talk about what you describe as different methodologies in terms of, so whether surveys or outside external experts giving advice and things like that. Does that help? I think Ben also.
Yeah, through you, Chair. We're also a member of the East Midlands Scrutiny Network. So this is exactly the sort of thing that we can take to the network and say, what experiences do you have? What are your thoughts? And then, and often is the case at the network, we can come up with a solution that benefits us all across the region. So, and it's something that I want to bring you in as chair. Our previous chair, Jill Mercer, who's now on the executive, she actually chaired the network for almost a year. So I'll provide you the details of the next meeting, which is the 21st of June. and we'll see if we can get along to that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So one further question, Chair, for Kunwar, just again regarding your introduction. You mentioned about some new legislation or some new guidance from the government. It's not something I know anything about, but then you said something that confused me. You said wait until after the election. What did you say? Election?
Sorry, my apologies. It is my fault, really. What I meant is I'm planning to do that work, reviewing the statutory guidance, so that can be reflected in the executive and scrutiny protocol. And what I meant to say is there's a election on Thursday, so we are tied up with that. So once that is out of the way, we will be able to do nothing to do with the general election or any other election. Apologies. And I think Councillor Buckingham.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Buckingham.
Yes, and you touched on something that I mentioned a bit earlier, which is the scoping, because that is a really important part of scrutiny that I haven't actually seen in motion within the council yet, which I'd like to see, because you're looking at areas of risk or areas where you want to look a little bit deeper, and so having that pre-meeting, that scoping meeting, to me is key as well. So thank you.
Okay, that's covered the Governing report, so we're on to the actual scrutiny. Do you want to say?
Sorry, just one last thing. The scrutiny annual report, as it is in draft form, we will further edit it, consult with yourself as chair. We've got a space for you to write a forward in there, and it will go to full council in June.
Okay, so yes, on to the annual report, which is page 19 onwards. Yes, and there's a forward, which I wanted to hear the outcome of this before writing anyway. And then a forward by Mr. Smith. I found a couple of typos. We can deal with it. We can deal with them outside. Okay. Yeah, the executive summary. My first thing I've got, and I'll go through it sort of page by page. So, section 3, executive summary, doesn't really mention call-ins as one of the roles, and perhaps we could add another bullet point about that. Anything else on executive summary? No? Okay. And then we've got top lines for scrutiny. So the only thing I thought, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the corporate scrutiny, I would have thought a bit more play on the budgets. I mean, a bit more detail on the budgets needed there, really. I mean, we'll come to that more. And why did I done that? Yeah. Anything else on 4? The top lines, people? No? Okay. And then we're on to 5. That's only short. Nothing there, presumably. 6, corporate plan. Nothing there. That's just a reiteration of the corporate plan. 7, we've got enhanced. And I thought that actually the end of 7A is probably the place you can put a bit about the EAPs there, because it's just where they fit in. And
Chair, is there something actually written in the Constitution somewhere about that, where it mentions EAPs? Is their scrutiny role actually explicit in that?
I think there are EAPs in the Constitution. Obviously, they won't be in the scrutiny advice from the government, because it's not.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking our own Constitution. I'm pretty sure there is something mentioned about the scrutiny role. I don't know whether that could be picked up and mentioned there.
Okay. Anything else in 7A and 7B? I think I might enhance the place and environment scrutiny list later on, because I think that's a bit short compared to when you look at the list later on. But I won't do that now. 8, strategic initiatives and outcomes. It looks like in community engagement and calling procedure we've repeated the same thing about the travellers site. Didn't need to be in there twice. And the other thing, I wasn't sure, it says here in impactful recommendations have led to the creation of local area partnerships. I understood that local area partnerships came out of the ICB, and maybe, I don't know whether, because they exist across the country. I don't know whether they actually came out of the Levelling Up review. Well, yeah, I can say that they certainly... Or helped shape, yes. Because they're very different in West, for instance. They're different style, different... and it doesn't... I wonder whether we have... It may not have happened, but we haven't said anything about having 2 scrutiny committees jointly meeting. So if there's something that cuts a, is cross-cutting, I think we ought to... I don't know if it has happened. I think it might have done. But we perhaps should say that scrutiny committees are able to work together when the project. Anything else in 8? Either of you got to comment? No? 9. Just key things. Anything to add? No. And then 10, budget scrutiny. John?
On the corporate scrutiny, and I don't know whether it's the same for all scrutiny panels, but we found problems, especially around the budget scrutiny, on having all the people there. So sometimes it was 3, 4, 5 people there rather than the full committee. And I wondered how we could strengthen that in some way, or if there was a thought about strengthening it, maybe different times of the day, or I don't know. It's just that when you've only got 2 or 3 people that can sort of turn up on that particular day, it does make things difficult. Sorry.
I don't know whether this belongs here or another bit, but I agree with you. I hark back to the county council days when every councillor, apart from the exec, was entitled and could attend, and we would have 20 councillors round even though they weren't all on that particular budget scrutiny. So they were more like working panels rather than... And obviously the chairman said the same and the vice chairman said the same and so on, but they were more working panels. And I mean, again, this is something that's been mentioned. I don't know whether it belongs here or somewhere else. Apart from involving more councillors, involving the public more is something we've talked about. And also, and I know there are other councillors as well, have mentioned looking at things that are not in the savings and investments. So things that just go under the radar and carry on year, are they still the right things? So, I mean, you're the corporate scrutiny, you may or may not want to do these things and where to put it, but it just occurs to me that, if you want to improve it and enhance it, then there are 3 things there that one can do. Did you want to, or Ben?
Yes, I think it would be fruitful to start to have that debate as we when we go into the next report, where I'm suggesting about us having this workshop in June about the year ahead and about how we conduct scrutiny ahead of the 25 elections.
But I think we ought to reflect somewhere in this report our aspirations and expectations for the future, not just backward looking, always needs to be a bit forward looking as well. Anything else on 10 then? 11 is the health scrutiny. 12 is place and environment. I mean, obviously, this is just a draft. You know, it's rather abbreviated. It's a précis of everything that went on, in a sense.
There's a typo that I'll just show to Ben if that's all right. So the word there shouldn't be there.
There's a couple of grammatical things and you know change. Yeah. And then we've got developer contributions. That's coming back, so that will be added. Again, it's 13 now, isn't it? After 12, 13. So we've got this comment about the establishment of LAPs again. We need to be mindful of. The outside bodies are coming along later on, aren't they? So 14 scrutiny meetings. Anything there? 15 training and development. So are these things that were actually attended by councillors, or they were run internally, or they were just available, people could go to?
Through you, Chair. So these, at the top of page 31, these were the events that were organised between us as officers and the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. So each of those events, they were in person, and a trainer from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny came and provided training, and this was part of us wanting to provide a comprehensive training offer on scrutiny because of the new way in which we're doing scrutiny from this year onwards, and the greater number of members who would be involved.
So people actually attended these, so that's good. Okay. Anything else on that paragraph? Go on.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be more of the training, and we've discussed because there were very few people on the ground at the training sessions. I just think it needs to be thought out a little bit more of how we get the people, you know, involved in that training, because it's no good 3 or 4 of us that have done it, as opposed to those that don't. And I get it that not everybody can attend meetings, as we said before, but I think they need to be better planned and get more people involved, even if it's some of that is online, you know, so that people can actually get to the meetings or tap in here and there, as well as, you know, there are free resources that we have through the LGA, as well as the Centre for Public Scrutiny, as well as that we can utilise and use. And some of those, you know, resources are ones that people can tap into as we're going along, so that when we are gathering those skills.
I mean, there's no reason why you can't use the first 10 or 15 minutes of a meeting to talk about a particular subject, because people will be there, the right people in that committee will be there, and it's another evening they haven't got to take out, or another daytime they haven't got to take out. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, a good example is the Audit and Governance Committee, that several times in the year we provide the hour before the meeting starts, we provide a private training session on a topic of, you know, the audit world or corporate governance world that members sort of are keen to sort of dig into a bit more detail on and get some, you know, expert advice on. So that's certainly something that we could look at for the particular scrutiny committees, especially when these are new scrutiny committees and I think we're probably all conscious that there's terms of reference for each scrutiny committee. There's been a lot of work during the last year, but there are areas where we perhaps have not focused quite enough on yet for each of the committees, and that's just a case of time and what's been a pressing matter to scrutinise this year. But those areas where you may not have scrutinised yet, you would benefit from a bit of forward training on ahead of that scrutiny.
Okay, did you want to come in?
Just to say, so one particular area which I think you both, Chair and Councillor Buckingham, touched on is the budget scrutiny, for example. So something which other authorities do quite regularly in terms of budget scrutiny. They will do a budget briefing session, mainly for scrutiny, but open to everyone, and it's informal online. And there you will have the experts, Section 151 or audit people coming and explaining the key top lines before you delve into the details scrutiny session. Yeah, which you had. Did you? Yeah. So something like that. On that principle, we can do something similar, or at the beginning, as councillor, the head of service said, in terms of at the beginning of meeting and council, and the chair you also mentioned. So along those two principles, we can do something. But I think the point is well made.
Yes, because particularly council finances can be a mystery to some people. It's some people have been around a long time; they're still a mystery too. Okay, 16, conclusion. Anything in there? Anything we want to conclude? Because we've also got 17 looking ahead, and this is probably where we can put details about expanding the budget process and enhancing that, isn't it? And also, it's not mentioned here, but I think we have a continuing, and everybody at the Big 50 will say the same thing, we have a continuing concern about the ICT. And that's not mentioned. I think that is something we need to pick up, because I think that's going to continue to be a thorn in our side in some respects. It should be
in 17, the ITT.
Yeah, another bullet point, yeah. Okay, anything else that we... Okay, then we're on to Appendix A, which is the corporate... Did you want to... This is your page, Councillor Buckingham, so... Did you want to comment or expand on anything?
No, and I think that... no, not really. I think I had the opportunity to feed back on it. For us, it was the skills that were on the corporate scrutiny. There were a lot of people that hadn't sat on that before, so going straight into the budget scrutiny was a little daunting. But I think that we managed to tease out some of the things that we needed to do. I know that myself and a couple of others did some training with the Centre for Public Scrutiny online beforehand. So I think I was clear as chair that we weren't there to look at the budget line by line, but we were looking at the department budget and whether or not they had the capacity, they understood how they needed to tighten their belts or loosen their belts in such a way, and that the main part of budget scrutiny is the medium-term financial planning afterwards, where you can then make sure that they're, sort of picking those things up that we've raised at the budget scrutiny itself. So it's almost then becomes a monitoring role. So it's not just this month or so where you sit down and look at budgets. It's the whole thing throughout the year, getting reports early, making sure that you've got the information that you need to be able to question some of those things. And I think that we managed to do that. And we even had little get-togethers afterwards and said, did we do that right? Do we need to know more? So that we could then take that back to the heads of service. And I think that's one of the things that the committee gave support on, which you know, I really valued. So I'm not saying that we've got it completely right, but for a new committee that had come together, I think we did a really good job.
Yeah, no, obviously. I mean, there's a couple of things in there. The timeliness of papers is one thing that should be picked up. There's also actually having more people allowed to take part brings you more experience and more knowledge, and maybe the people who have done it before come along and are able to contribute. But also, you're also there to consider the effect that the proposals might have on the residents and the users of services. You know, so that looking that way as well, which, you know, sometimes have probably been considered, but they need to be understood and you know, and ensured that they're appropriate. So. Okay. Anything else you got now?
And I was just going to say that, you know, a new council, they're still going through the review, you know, departments are still going through reviews in terms of staffing, budgets, what they need to achieve. That, you know, also was an area where, different from having a county council that's been established for 100 and odd years, everybody knows what's going to go on. So, well, you know what I mean.
Yes.
You've got more of a... But this is a young council, and it's still, you know, doing the transformation. It's still doing that, and we acknowledge that.
And there are people who've not been a councillor before. So, the only thing is not the asset rationalisation working party. Did that come out of corporate, or did it come out of place and economy? Because it reported back to place and economy, but it's here in corporate. So, or was it a joint one?
No, it didn't come out of corporate.
So you've got asset rationalisation in-depth review, and it's probably maybe in the wrong place. It's on page 35. Okay. Anything else on Councillor Bucket? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, it's just something I don't know much about. Is the Children's Trust? Do we have any separate way of scrutinising that, other than obviously it's come up with corporate, and I remember it coming before the predecessor board to Place and Economy at times. But is there any separate body? Is there anything joint with the West that we do for scrutinising it?
Well, it says in effective scrutiny of the trust, and parts of the trust did come to health as well, because of various things they do. But yes, there is a body with, let's call them senior councillors, you know, that oversees it as a joint board. I can't remember what it's called.
Yes, it's the Children's Services Joint Committee. It's got the executive members for Children's Services and other senior members of each executive, which serve on it.
I mean, obviously, if it's got members of the executive on it, it's not exactly a scrutiny committee, but is it something that we should note somewhere as it is part of the scrutiny process, because we're obviously having to, you know, it's such an important part of the council, and yet it's arm's length, you know. Should it be noted somewhere separately on this report?
Did you want to come in? Yes.
Yeah. So the last Health Scrutiny Committee particularly looked at the Children's Trust, and the representative came to that committee, and their finances were scrutinized at the last meeting. So it is something we're already doing, but I think there's a lot more we can do on that front. So we can still make that point.
Yeah, is it mentioned in? I know we haven't got onto the health bit yet, but is it? It's just that I glanced down, I just didn't see that. Is it mentioned in the table of meetings and tasks and seen through?
We can review and make sure it is if it isn't.
Yeah, obviously we're coming on to that
because
anyway.
maybe that the last one when they were writing
Okay.
it was, but we will make sure because
Yeah.
I was at that health scrutiny. So yeah, thank you.
It says at the top of page 35 IV. It talks about the Children's Trust in corporate. So it's such a wide-ranging body that it probably comes to more than one. But yes, it ought to be in the. So are we content with the corporate? So the health, I've got no. I just thought that the conclusion, second paragraph, was a bit sort of down on us, really. It says it has not been so proactive in making recommendations. I think it has made recommendations, but it's not. Often the things are out with the council. I think we perhaps could find a more
Positive.
acceptable, positive way of doing that. Anything else anybody's got? No. Appendix C, place and environment. That's again mostly a reiteration of what it's actually done. 7, the KLV, obviously that'll need adding because there has been a decision. And there's 2 dates that are wrong in the conclusion in the thing. The EV infrastructure, you've got October 24, and it should be October 23 for those 2.
Where are those? Are you looking at appendix
Page,
C1? Or?
Yeah, C1.
Okay.
40, there's about halfway down. There's 2 dates that are, in fact, 3
Yeah,
dates that are out.
3,
So,
yes.
yeah, 3 dates that are, 4 dates that are out. Nice if you can do it. Anything else on health? No, on place. Sorry. We'll talk about that one. Okay, so we're all happy with. This is the draft so far. The recommendation is that we note and comment on which we have done. And go on.
Chair, just for the record, sorry, the health, the scrutiny of the Children Trust was at the corporate, not the health. But it may have been previous health scrutiny, but definitely the corporate one. Just wanted, for the public record, I wanted to make sure that I didn't get that wrong. Thank you.
And then we've got a recommendation B, subject to above, delegate to the officers in consultation with the chairman of the Scrutiny Management Board and Scrutiny Manager to finalise the contents of the report prior to its submission. Okay, we're all happy with? Splendid. So next we've got the Scrutiny Work Plan. Okay, did you want to?
Thank you, Chair. So we are now at the very much of the tail end of the current year and the end of this work plan. So what I've done here is worked with Kunwar and Carol, Raj and Louise as the 3 scrutiny officers to make sure that we pull together and quantify any outstanding items that haven't been considered this year and capture those. And they've been added into, if I go to, for each of the committees, we have a section about topic areas beyond May 2024. So all of those areas that we've not yet considered, they're included in there. Also for continuity purposes, rather than just sort of end this year with the annual meeting, I've made sure that we've covered the forthcoming meeting, be that before the annual meeting of the council or just after, in order that you as a Scrutiny Management Board and the chairs and vice chairs of the committee are able to appropriately plan ahead for your next meeting, and so that when you undertake the proposed workshop, which I've mentioned in the report, to report back to our next meeting at the end of June, that you're able to plan for the remainder of the year. The one thing that I would say is that, and I think Kunwar picked up on this in the previous report about being sort of measured and selective in the things that you scrutinise. So we do have a number of items that we are carrying forward to consider whether or not remains an area of focus for the coming year. But also it is a shorter year as well, this coming year, so we do need to take that into account. That PERDA for the pre-election period will be sort of middle of March next year. So you as councillors are sort of, you know, knocking on doors, etc. And the sort of the pace of the work of the council from a governance perspective will head right down at that point. Councillor Buckingham. Did I go on for too long when you were thinking about?
No, I do remember. Sorry, I'm not as bad as I made out. So part of what we talked about when the Scrutiny Management Board was set up was some of the items coming to scrutiny would be briefing notes on new legislation or things that we're not sure that we were going to be looking at in more depth, but just wanted to know a little bit more about. So can those also be incorporated into the work plan in some way? I know that one of those was going to be housing because that comes under a new regulatory regime. So it's those sorts of things that we talked about, as I say, when within our first sort of few meetings, that doesn't seem to be reflected in the work plan as is.
I have to say that, I mean, having been on two councils before, the number of members' briefing notes, or whatever you want to call them, that are done this council is remarkably low. They're almost non-existent, and you used to get them weekly at the borough, and quite often at county as well. Whatever the subject was, it might have been something the council was doing. It might have been, as you say, something of national interest, or and I know they take time, but quite often they're just cut and paste of another report that's being written anyway. But yes, so that I don't know whether that's a scrutiny thing or whether it's something that just should be looked at. But certainly, you know, it helps councillors to know what's going on. It answers questions before they get asked in a lot of respects. Cool.
Absolutely. Certainly, I think with the shortened period that we've got for scrutiny this coming year, I think it will be invaluable to, you know, ratchet up the use of briefing notes in between meetings. It may be, for instance, that you choose as part of the work programme that you've got specific subjects that you don't necessarily think you need to look at a committee meeting. You're quite happy with some background provided by senior officers of a given area. It may be that you, for instance, at corporate scrutiny, where you're looking at performance indicators or financial issues, it may be arising from that meeting that you say, actually, we'd like to dig in a bit more detail here. We don't necessarily think that it's an issue that warrants, say, a full scrutiny review panel. However, we would like to have some more reassurance, and a briefing note would be a good way of you getting that assurance.
I mean, also, when there are normal inquiries, I mean, just as a hypothetical thing, I might write to Neil Goddard and say, how many of our schools are outstanding? And instead of writing back, he might think, well, I'll tell everybody that piece of news, because that's of interest to everybody, and not just the one who's written. Okay. Just a hypothetical example. It's not. So we've got the covering report, and we'll come back to recommendations. We've got report background, and then we've got, in paragraph 5 is the real bit, the issues and choices, remaining work plan and work planning. And that's perhaps where we can, in that paragraph, where we can put something about the timing of meetings and the timing of getting stuff to enable it to go for the, in time for the forward plan.
Yes, and certainly, we're suggesting that it would be appropriate this year, as I said, with the sort of hangover of items not yet considered, with the shortened year, that you undertake a workshop format, and then last year with the new scrutiny setup, we had that scrutiny executive conference, and I think it would be good following the May 25 elections with the new council that we return to that arrangement, or at least you consider that. And I think, from my perspective, everything about sort of carry forwards is covered. We do have in this report some specific requests to sort of add to the future work programme from Corporate Scrutiny Committee. We don't have any individual requests from individual members. The requests from Corporate Scrutiny Committee are attached at, where are we? At Appendix C to the report. And with this sort of crossover period, you may want to look at items in the Executive Forward Plan that you might want to specifically consider as part of the June meeting in order to work plan for over the summer and the early autumn.
For me, there are two things there. First of all, the forward plan is rather sparsely populated and doesn't go the full 6 months quite often, and it should really go 6 months. And the number of things that keep getting moved and pushed back because the reports aren't ready makes scrutinising them very difficult, because the reports aren't ready for us either. And planning, when you're trying to plan in reports that are based on things the exec are doing, and then finding you've got a hole and trying to fill it, and then things you've planned further on pushed aside because another report. So it would be quite helpful to have a bit more accuracy in the forward plan, and a bit more long information for the full 6 months. Personally,
is it ever going to happen? Is what I wonder.
I don't know.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's always going to be things that are going on, and we're just going to be chasing along behind. Yeah, I acknowledge it is a problem.
Also, I mean, are we all happy with the process of putting things on the work plan? Because it just seems a bit cumbersome and and slow sometimes. The committee's got to meet. It recommends to us. It goes back to them, and like 6 months later, something they wanted to look at, they haven't even started. I just wonder whether there is anything we can do to make that a bit smoother. A bit.
So what I do encourage is if there is something specific that does need to be scrutinised in between meetings of the Scrutiny Management Board, that, you know, it shouldn't just wait and just hang around, you know, almost like a bad smell. It should be the job of the Scrutiny Chair and Vice Chair to discuss with the senior officers who work with them on that specific committee, and if something does need to come, which is relatively urgent, then there should be the flexibility to allow that to happen. However, what does sometimes happen is that carefully planned scrutiny agendas of maybe 2 or 3 key items suddenly morphs into 3, 4, 5, 6 items, and then our central concern as statutory scrutiny officer and scrutiny manager is that are we able to undertake effective scrutiny and you know, we may have carefully said, well, we're going to have, say, call someone in, say if it was Place from Keir, and, you know, you were originally going to bring them in for an hour, and you may have to curtail that, or there's 3 or 4 items after that, and you've got Keir in for an hour and a half, and then actually you're not giving justice to those other items. So balance always does need to be applied.
Well, if necessary, you can always add meetings, Lynn.
And I agree, it's such a fine balance that, you know, you can find yourself into a scrutiny review when you've got other things. So, like the last corporate scrutiny, we went over quite a bit, and it meant that we didn't get to hear one of the items properly, and that should never happen. And maybe that was just as much my fault, because they wanted this review of the data and the new, you know, data coming in, but we had some other things that were sort of catch up, and so yeah, it's a very fine line. We're not going to get it always spot on, but we do need that mix of short, sharp things that we can look at, as well as the more in-depth and knowing and understanding which is which, because I wasn't aware that we were going to go fully into depth in the customer strategy, but we had a really good debate on that. So, you know, fine lines, and maybe I've got to learn better how I can control those fine lines and what we ask for within that framework that we've got. So, yes, I agree.
I always find that meetings go well if you've got good, well-written reports with the information you need up front, rather than just suddenly being landed on you, which happens. Okay, did you want to?
Ben, can I come in? Doesn't it? So in terms of, just to capture some of the points and something we would like to get your expertise and feedback properly at the workshop, but just to capture a few things. In terms of priority, Councillor Buckingham, hope you can hear me. Yeah, now you can. Okay, sorry. So in terms of, you will, I think no authority, no scrutiny committee can look at everything which the Cabinet considers. It's not possible. So a prioritization of what you're going to look at would be the key. Some of the things you can use, I think you've already touched upon one of them, which is the use of briefing notes, and also briefing of committee members on Teams, on informally, which is not a public meeting, but you feel it's important enough, whether it's schools you talked about, education or health or something else. So we could incorporate that in the future forward work programme for scrutiny. Also, we are slightly dependent on what is on the executive forward plan to see when they put in and how it's come and changes. So I know Councillor, the Chair's committee, Scrutiny Committee, which Councillor Wilson chairs, is very busy. It's always like lots going on compared to, say, others. So I think one thing which I understand from Mr. Smith is that this management board has agreed that no more than 2 substantive items for the committee scrutiny meetings, which we are thinking of moving to no more than 3 substantive items with your, recommendation, but that we can debate at the forward planning workshop. But it is something, that's the only thing. I think more than 3 substantive reports you won't be able to do in an evening, really.
You've got 3 hours, so you can get away with 3 because an hour for each one should be enough. But it's sometimes the question of looking at that'll only be a short item. Doesn't turn out to be a short item, but you can. And some councils actually put timings on the agenda to try and guide people. You've got an hour. This is going to be a 20-minute session, whatever, and it helps the chairman as well.
You've stolen a bit of our thunder. Okay. You have stolen a bit of our thunder on timing, but thank you. As a good chair,
I've been around a long time.
Yeah. Only last thing, if I may, through you, Chair. So, what I, with your permission, I will be thinking of developing a very short form online. If somebody wants to add an item to forward plan, and as long as they fulfill that and say what's the reason they want to, how it adds value, and how it meets the corporate priorities. I just need to reflect the new guidance into it, which just been issued. So that is, if that's okay with both of you, I would be looking at that.
Yeah. And obviously we've got this maximum of 4 panels, except for the budget and the outside bodies. But that doesn't stop councillors doing an investigation of their own. And I think councillors need to be aware of that. If they've got something that's a small item that they can go and they could report back, well, there's nothing to stop them doing that. Anything else in the actual paper, and then we can look at the Appendix A, which is the work plan. So we've got the Scrutiny Management Board, which is page 58 onwards. We've got all our fairly standard things for this, and then we've got the corporate scrutiny. So you've got agency, which has been around for a while, and pay and grading, which is June, and you've got the regular performance figures, and then after that you've got some biggies: ICT transformation, revs and bends, budget. And I wonder whether October's early enough to start on the budget. You need to put even if you haven't got the figures,
the report,
the planning for
that
it.
we wanted,
So this is separate to the budget scrutiny process. So this is setting out the corporate timeline and sort of expectations about the local government settlements from government. Sort of when will the local government settlement be? How long is the piece of string? So that's more the sort of the corporate timeline of the budget. So we will be able to work much earlier on setting a stall out for how we want to conduct the budget scrutiny process.
Yeah. The ICT one is one that the working party should be up and running shortly. It's done half its work, so it only has. Guy Holloway has told us it's only 3 meetings to finish that report to bring back in August. So hopefully that will happen. And some of the other things could be the transformation stuff. We've already had a report back from Councillor Bundy on that. on the timelines and things. So it's just updating that bit. So yes.
And then you've got two over the page as well, Social Care Ombudsman Annual Report, and there's the Children's Trust again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on these, what we wanted to do, and Carol was very good in providing these, we wanted to make sure that those sort of key items, that sort of annual items, that they are captured, so that, you know, when we go back to substantive number of items at a single meeting, that we're not forgetting that we do need to look at these as well.
Okay, you got that. Right, and then we've got health scrutiny, we've got NHFT, and and this one's already out, isn't it? NHFT and ICB forward plan and GPs. And then beyond the annual council exclusions, I thought that was family hubs, DFGs, children's health, Kettering General. We've had that recently, so I presume that's just an update. And then public health commissioning. So they've got quite a number of items as well. They're already on the work programme somewhere, are they?
Yes, and some of these items we do need to flesh out, and Cummar's proposed form, you know, sort of setting out what it is as councillors that you want from specific items will help the quality of the reports from the officers and allow the officers to focus in on the specific areas that councillors want to look at. Because sometimes I think you'll ask for a report on an item in it, and maybe in your head you'll be like, this is what we want to look at, and then the officer may have not picked up on that. And so that key communication before the report is written is something that we really want to develop this year.
As part of the enhancement of a scrutiny from June onwards, we will be looking at how can we develop the pre-meeting, and part of that would be early input into the draft reports as to from the chair and vice chair. It'll be informal on Teams, and we can say what is that you're looking for, so hopefully we can shape that a bit better.
It's something I've always done. Councillors have pre-meetings. Not everybody has done, but I've always done. Okay, so we've got. Oh, sorry, go on. Yeah.
Just really for a point of information, probably I should know this, but where do schools come? I mean, I notice exclusions here under health scrutiny, but in the list of things that Place and Environment do, they haven't listed education.
It does fall under health scrutiny.
Yes. The titles of these could be very long if you put everything down. Okay, so that's we haven't got the chairman here, but yeah. Okay, so Place and Environment. So we've got 3 that are going tomorrow. Nice meaty ones. Tomorrow, and then we've got an additional meeting on the 21st of May, and I think we're doing doing 3 of those then.
Chair, it's just number 4. It says scheduled for.
The order is wrong.
Is scheduled for.
They're not in that order. But
Yeah, the numbering has gone a bit askew on those 2 pages.
I wasn't referring to the numbering, just that it says under section 4.1 agreements, second one is scheduled for 29/2/24. So I don't know, is that a copy and paste or something?
which one?
Do you see what I'm pointing at? It's on page 66, item 4, section 103.6 agreements. It says second one in the final cell, second one is scheduled for. And
Yes,
that gives a date in the past.
That section should have been deleted because we're now reporting back. It was second meeting. So this was the last time we looked at this. It was saying that the second meeting is scheduled for 29th of Feb, but that meeting and a further meeting is now taking place.
Yeah, I was going to say that happened. Actually, I think there's another thing like that. And then we've got topics beyond. We've got asset rationalisation and surplus assets. And it keeps bouncing backwards and forwards. I thought we had discussed the local nature recovery strategy. So I don't know where that's come from. Maybe it's an update on it.
We'll check, but as it says, it's expected February 25. It may be that you requested to review it in 12 months.
Well, it could have been an initial draft or something that for ideas that came. I'm sure there was discussion on it anyway. And then the panels, we've got the asset rationalisation. Well, hopefully that will finish soon. And we've got the 106, hopefully that will finish soon. And the ICT will probably carry on for another half year. So we've got the crime and disorder knife crime, but presuming that's a suggestion for a new panel. But have we got any others? Because we'll only have 2 going.
Yeah, so that will be a matter for the workshop in June, is to decide which panels you would like for the forthcoming year. So we've got a number of panels which have either just ended or are coming to an end, which then will free up space for new panels.
But we will need to have some ideas to go to them. It's no good going to the meeting and then ideas coming up. We need to have some thought beforehand, so that the things to decide from.
Yeah. So one of the things that we can discuss sort of outside of this meeting is how to engage councillors with items that they may request that you consider as part of your annual work plan. So we could provide a survey to councillors, a short survey asking if there are any particular issues that they feel should be scrutinised in detail this year.
Okay, there was something. I just wanted to have you done customer services in your thing already? You've done that already.
We've done part of it. So we had a presentation at the last corporate scrutiny, which we had a really good discussion on. We've asked for that to come back in October. So we've done part of it. There are more things that are going to be implemented over the next sort of few months. So we want to find out what impact that is having. So we're still doing some of the telephony, some of the those bits that need to be put into place. So it will then be looking at how is that working? Is that working for our residents or not?
I noticed there was going to be a visit, or somebody asked to go.
They
So I wondered if you wanted to have a working panel to go and investigate the customer.
What they wanted to do was to actually go and sit in a call centre, see what sort of things are coming in, how people interacted with customers, etc. That was still going to be worked out between Simon and that. I would imagine that we will get an update on that at the next corporate scrutiny. We'll ask for an update on that, because it's an ongoing thing.
It is, and you hear some very concerning stories of things people are told and answers people get, and it is the face of the council in a lot of respects, and the first thing that residents see, and if they don't get the help they need, it doesn't look good for everybody.
And it was also about the member inquiries as well, because those are, it's not quite working how we envisaged it would be working. So it's those sort of things that will be coming back in.
We have a new customer relationship management system coming in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I couldn't go to any of the demonstrations. They were all days when I had other things on. But that may help. Sorry, you wanted to come in.
I was just going to say, you may wish to consider if you'd like to, after having that update, whether you'd like to. I think, if I got the gist from the chair right, that you may wish to consider that as an option for a working group or a task and finish group. Yeah. Should you feel there is more to it, then you'd like to have a more in-depth look. Yeah. Because I keep remembering the statutory guidance and chair's comments and other comments that we need to be externally focused. It is an area where resident interaction with the council happens. So I think that would be quite a good area to do. In addition to that, one of my suggestions would have been, because we've started talking a little bit more than I thought we might do here, is at the workshop. I was going to, before the workshop, one of the things I was going to ask each chair and vice chair to come up with at least one topic which is external facing, in line with the statutory guidance and in line with what we've been lacking as a scrutiny. So if you all think about it, and you may wish to say that I'd like to open it up to my committee members through you and ask them for suggestion, and then at least I will have 3 or 4 topics potentially which are externally facing for a potential task and finish group. And then we can go to relevant officers or stakeholders through our team and talk to you and say, how can we bring it together? What is that? How the value added part look like? What we can do, and so on and so forth. Hope that's helpful in terms of way forward. Thank you.
So I've got a couple of things to say, but just for clarification, when you say external, you mean as in customer facing? Is that what you mean?
Also, for example, health, crime, if you wish to, or anything which we have statutory responsibility over. Obviously, scrutiny has soft power outside. Internally, we can we can compel anyone to appear before the select committee, but externally is a use of soft power and influence and engagement.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. One was planning. Has anyone scrutinised the planning arrangements? Because I think we still have a system where we've got these different systems basically. Does that fall under the ICT review, or is anyone looking at it, or is it on track?
Go on.
Yeah, I think that will fall under the Planning Improvement Board in the first instance that was discussed at full council last week. So I think that body has specifically been requested to report into scrutiny. So rather than duplicate that work in the here and now, I think we make sure that we do get regular updates throughout the rest of the year and make sure that that gets included into our work plan.
There is a planning transformation board as well, which is looking at the overall, the whole service, and that presumably includes harmonisation and the implementation of new software and new schemes. So, in addition to the extra board that was done at council.
Would it be worth, Chairman, mentioning in the last item that we were looking at the fact of this planning improvement board, because that's another aspect of scrutiny, isn't it? That isn't in the introduction.
Yeah, I don't know where it actually fits in. Whether it.
You mentioned earlier that what like e.g. EAPs, which are not mentioned. I didn't know whether that could be this planning improvement board, which was of course only just passed by the council last week. The other thing I wanted to mention was I remember reading in the paper about West Northamptonshire scrutinised voice scooters. Is that, I don't know if that's something that we would want to do or not. Is there something? Is there a contract up for renewal? Does it work like that, or are they just a private company and that's it?
They are a private company who are operating under a government scheme that's a trial period that keeps getting extended, but there is I don't think I would call it a contract, but there is an agreement between the council and Voy, which could, and that could be looked at. I mean, to get it extended, I mean, I know that I asked them at the time for things like helmets and registration marks and lights and whatever, certain enhancements for safety, which have all come along. So, but yes, you can. I mean, I suspect there any scrutiny we did would be pretty similar to what the West found, and they'd have the same answers to the same questions, I'm sure. But yes, it could be put on. Okay, so and then we've got so we've done the panels, and then we've got items to refer to EAPs, and the green burials is gone. Adoption of roads. Is this because we want to have a long-term policy? Because there are a number of issues with road adoptions, and I can name a few right off the top of my head, where there's roads not been adopted for dozens of years, and not much prospect of them being so in some cases. So I don't know, what was this just for EAPs to recommend a policy for how this would be handled for outstanding long-term ones, or was this to actually look at what roads were adopted? I don't know.
Yeah, and there's been a big bit in the paper or on local media recently around here where those developers, sort of haven't put those forward. So anything that will enhance that for, excuse me, I'm going to start coughing. Anything that will make it easier for residents, because we've had all sorts of issues around developers going bust, all those things that just needs a little bit of clarity on what residents can do. So I fully agree and endorse anything that will help that process.
And I found in a particular estate when I looked at it, I thought, well, these are all council houses. Why is the road not adopted? And it had been built by the county council years and years and years ago, and everybody had lost the record. I found an officer who remembered, who knew, and that was knowledge. If you hadn't had the knowledge, that's could be a serious issue, because all the street lights have gone out and nobody's accepting responsibility. So there are a number of things apart from the ones the developers have done. Apart from things, but I don't know why this has been referred to an EAP if it's a current issue.
I'll go back to Carol and check the where that originated from. I'm not sure in the here and now.
I mean, it's definitely something councillors would be interested in, and I mean, I can understand there's a long-term policy, but there's also a current issue. So it might be that both get to look at it. Okay, so that's done those, and then we.
I think that would be a prime example of a good subject for you to receive a briefing note on, about the background of adoption of roads. For instance, where are we in terms of our policy? Because a number of policies from April 2021 were county-wide policies. Have we got to the stage yet where we have reviewed it and sort of made the policy our own? So, for instance, it was a few months ago the home to school transport policy was reviewed. It had a very good workout through scrutiny and through place and environment scrutiny, and then was adopted by the executive, which comes into force for this coming school year in September. So it's one of those where, you know, where do we sit at the moment with adoption of roads? So that would be good, a bit of an explainer to provide to you. Yeah.
Okay, and then we've got the forward plan. So it's a bit pointless looking at May because we haven't got any time to look at those. They've got a full calendar. June, the budget and the capital gets done. Then there's a traffic signals obsolescence, so that's just accepting a grant. I don't think there's any particular need to look at that. Then homelessness is getting looked at. Bus service improvement plan is getting looked at. Hackney carriage is getting looked at. Carbon management is getting looked at. Fire safety policies, I don't think that's being done. I don't know whether that's if that's compliance with a national requirement. There's probably no need to look at that. Air quality, I think, is getting looked at. And asset acquisition, I'm not sure that's coming in June, is it? I don't know. If it is, that's one that I would notice, because that's you know, spending the council's money and for what reason. So I'd be interested to know if that's still coming in June. I suspect we haven't got time to fit it in because we've already got 3 things on the next place thing. So, but it'd be interested. Yeah, I'd be interested to know what's. July, we've got capital programme, disposal of land. I don't suppose that's particularly. Compliments, comments and complaints. Is that something you want to look at, Councillor Buckingham? The compliments, comments and complaints is in the July exec. Is that something you're going to look at?
Yes. We were going to have a briefing from Adele when it was part of her portfolio. And yes, because we have not just the care ombudsman, we have several ombudsmans where we need to balance it more. Although there is a memorandum of understanding between most of the ombudsmen now, it's just so that we're aware of, you know, who does what and etc.
Okay, good. And then we've got Appendix C, additional items requested. They all seem worthwhile things. They've all come from corporate scrutiny, giving yourself some work to do. So we're all happy with those being added. I mean, we're not putting a time scale on this, are we? It's just, it says 9th of April, but that's obviously your request date. Yes, go on.
The first one was asking Health Scrutiny to look at the partnerships between the Children's Trust, the local authority, because we were hearing the stories about the invoicing and who doesn't want to pay for what and whatever, and it's just that it needs to have a strong partnership where everybody comes in. So we've said to Health Scrutiny, would you have a look at this just to see if there's anything on that to actually look? So that's not coming back to our scrutiny, but we're asking you to look at it. That was the recommendation that we sort of made. So does that make sense to you?
So it's the relationships really, and what should and shouldn't be paid for, and who by, and so on. And have they got a schedule for that at Health Scrutiny?
So these 3 items are about sort of accepting the items to go into the mix for you to consider at the workshop in June. Yeah. And at that workshop, you know, sort of regurgitating what we've already said. It's about looking at those items and prioritising, you know, what is your top priorities for the year.
Okay. Well, can all go in the mix, can't they? Yeah. And no others that I'm not aware of any others anyway. I'm sure we'll find some. Okay, so we've got some recommendations, a few pages back. There we are. So recommends that we provide comments about whether the updated list and work plan is satisfactory. Considers whether items in the forward plan should be added. So we just discussed those. Items generated by scrutiny should be added. We just discussed those. Approve the final iteration of the work plan. So we've only got a month or so to go anyway. So agrees the process for creating the 2024-25 work plan as set out for between 5.8 and 5.5 and 5.8, which is an overview and talks about the work plan. Does it actually mention the conference or whatever you want to call it?
Yes, it's in 5.6. Yes, 5.6, due to the shorter year of activity.
Yeah, so we've got that. All happy with the recommendations? Splendid. I think that's all we have on the agenda apart from close the meeting, so let's do that. Close the meeting at 8:32.
Thank you very much.